So our next guest has taken the launch model with Amazon with a kind of a different twist, and it was very impressive. So who here has heard of Kickstarter.com? So our next guest, John Galley, actually was willing to share with us a strategy that he used that he absolutely killed it, which you are now going to hear, and it's using a powerful website, Kickstarter.com, where he was able to not only launch a product, but get right into the Amazon vendor program with it, which is huge. That means never being on Amazon before, and boom, launching a product using Kickstarter, having a successful launch, and I mean like an incredibly successful launch, which he's going to share about, but then being able to create a product that Amazon right away wanted to take ownership of. When you become a vendor central, what that means is that Amazon wants to take over your product and start selling it. You get to reap all the benefits of them pretty much running the show for you. So without any more, I'm going to introduce our next special guest, Mr. John Galley.
Hey, how's it going? Good. Jason,
Sir,
thanks, man.
You're welcome.
Hello, ASM. My name's John, and I'm a recovering lawyer. Now, you've all heard about 12-step programs, but the recovering lawyer program is an 18-step program because 12 steps just aren't enough. All right, you're probably thinking, what's this old bozo doing up there? I mean, God, I'm older than Methuselah. So you're perhaps thinking, what can this guy possibly share with us that's going to be in any way useful? Let me give you a quick overview. What if, let's just play the what if game. What if there was a way for you to do exactly what Matt and Jason have taught us to do, which is to meaningfully differentiate your product in a way that would make yours different from any of the other competitors in your widget category? And what if you had the ability to then have the money to find a manufacturer who would put that differentiation into your product? What if you also had money for inventory? What if you had the opportunity to test market your product in a beta incubator and find out whether it really has the kind of commercial consumer appeal that you want it to have? What if that process gave you the opportunity to identify any problems that you had with your product that your customers didn't necessarily care for, and so now you have the opportunity to fix it before you go on Amazon and risk having bad reviews or having Amazon, kind of really get on your case? How would you like to be able to seed your Amazon product listing with hundreds of 5-star reviews within 10 days of going live on Amazon? How would you like to have over 1,500 names and email addresses of satisfied customers to start building your list with? And would it be all that bad if, in addition to all of that, that you wound up with between $50,000 and $100,000 in your pocket in pure profit after 31 days? Is all of that okay? You want to learn how to do that? All right, let's get to work. All right, crowdfunding is a way primarily to raise capital and do it in a way that you don't have to face down two things that you would much prefer not to do. Those would be having to borrow money, right? Not a good thing. Or having to give up an equity position in your product. This is not Shark Tank. You don't have to give up something in order to get something. The wonderful thing about crowdfunding is it's a way to raise money, to raise capital, and has no borrowing and no giving up your equity. So how do you do that? Basically, you pre-sell your product in a very unusual way that Kickstarter has made possible. Now, just as a quick digression, Kickstarter is not the only crowdfunding platform. There are a number of them. But this is what you need to know about Kickstarter. It's the biggest in its class. It's not the 500-pound gorilla in this category. It is the 5,000-pound gorilla in the category. And it isn't just here in the United States. This is international. I was absolutely blown away when we did our Kickstarter project when it turned out that 40% of all of the people who supported my project were from outside the United States. So, not only is this an opportunity to build a following for your product here in the US, you can get a good groundswell going in other countries. For example, toward the latter part of our campaign, a couple of bloggers in Japan found out what we were doing, and we got swamped with orders from Japan. So all of this is possible. Now, Kickstarter and many other crowdfunding platforms have a unique proposition, and you need to understand part of how this works. What you're on there doing, as I said, is raising capital. And they ask you to name a goal. How much money are you looking to raise? And that's kind of an art form, and I'm going to talk briefly about it in a moment. But you set this goal, and then it's all or nothing. If you miss that goal by $1, you get nothing. So it's very important to look at how you set that goal very, very carefully. You might say, well, I'll take care of this easily. I'll set it very low. That should be easy to meet my goal, and then I get my money. But it's not necessarily that easy, because what you're seeking to raise this money for is to help develop this product. And that may take a certain amount of money. I'll just give you a simple example. Let's say that it would going to take $20,000 to have this widget of yours redesigned with the special differentiation that you had chosen. And again, you're going to need 20 grand, and so you put as a goal in your Kickstarter campaign $10,000. And you raise the $10,000. Wow, you've got your goal, you get your money. But you're still $10,000 shy of being able to complete your project, because where are you going to get that money? You better have it in your own pocket or some other way of doing it, or basically you've shot yourself in the foot by not making sure that you named a goal that would be certain that you could do the project. Better to not do it at all than be halfway through it and then really look like a dunce. So, you need to set a goal that you think you can achieve, but that's going to have the money that you're going to need for your project. What's this going to cost you with Kickstarter? They take a 5% commission on all of the monies that are pledged to you. And then, in addition to that, you have the processing fees of collecting the payments. Interestingly, which I'll talk more about a little later, that's all done through Amazon payments. Interesting, isn't it? Could have been any number of different platforms they could have chosen, but they chose Amazon. And that'll run you about 3%. Higher if you have international backers, which I did, so I probably paid a little more than 3%. All right, this is a picture of what our Kickstarter project page looked like. And you can see that we had 2,881 backers who actually ordered 3,662 pair of the eyewear. We raised in 31 days $348,449. My campaign was the most successful campaign in the history of any Kickstarter project in my home state of Maine. Absolutely shattered that record. And we also set a record for the most successful Kickstarter campaign in the sunglasses category ever. We smashed that by over double what the old record had been. So it worked pretty well, and I'll be the first to stand here and tell you I never would have guessed in a million years we would have done that well. Am I willing to give the money back? Well, no. Okay, what are the objectives of a Kickstarter campaign? Well, we've already touched on some of this. You're out there to raise capital. And basically we needed the necessary money to produce the initial eyewear that we were going to be offering to people prior to taking it on Amazon. Also, we obviously wanted to, if possible, to create some inventory that we could go to Amazon with when we were ready to do that. We not only needed money for product to fulfill our campaign pledges, but we also were hoping to be able to afford inventory for Amazon as well. I've already mentioned how it is a beta market opportunity. Well, what do you think the results of that Kickstarter campaign were for our product in terms of validating to us that we had a winner? This is what they look like. These are the babies. And so we can go forward with the confidence of knowing that people like our product. And that is incredibly important. You also, as I mentioned earlier, you gain some product knowledge that you might not have otherwise had. For example, the overwhelming response to people about the technology that is in these glasses, which is what makes them special, that is amazingly positive. But we have had some people who weren't all that happy with the frames. Now, we told them from the outset, these are not Gucci frames, this is not Ralph Lauren, these are there to perform a function. But there were still some people who didn't like them. And having learned that, I've made the decision that before we go on Amazon itself, we're going to change those frames. I'm not going to give people a chance to go on there and complain about the frames the way they did on the Kickstarter program, just a very small percentage of people. But of course, the people who are unhappy are the most vocal and the loudest. And I don't want to give Amazon any reason to not like us. So we learned that we needed to make that change, and we're going to be doing that. So it is important to be able to learn these things before you start playing the game for the real big money. All right. This is part of what you have to understand about Kickstarter and why it may not necessarily be for everybody. You need something to differentiate your product. Now, Matt and Jason have told us at great length about the various things that we can do to differentiate what is otherwise a very, very common product. But I'll be very candid in telling you that for Kickstarter success, you're going to have to go beyond that. It's going to have to be more than good packaging or more than a very extremely well-crafted product page listing. You're going to have to come up with something that is a little different. Now, people say, well, John, especially anybody who looked at our campaign and knows the story, they're going to say, well, John, you had it made in that regard. You had a differentiation. You had patented technology that was used by Navy SEALs and Rangers, for God's sake. And you were putting it in your consumer sunglasses, and people lapped it up with a spoon. How many of us are going to have a chance to do something like that? Well, we're going to talk about that in a moment. You also need to understand Kickstarter is not, I repeat, not a place where you go to sell inventory of a product that you have right now. You will not get to first base with the Kickstarter audience. In fact, Kickstarter itself will probably not approve your project, and it'll never get launched. So do not think that this is a place to simply go and sell inventory in an alternative format. That ain't what it's about. All right, let's talk about differentiation and what you could possibly do to find differentiation for your product idea. Again, we know that Matt and Jason have told us how important that is to do. And they've taught us how to do that in a generic kind of product. But what if you need to go deeper and further, which you need to do in order to have Kickstarter success? I've been married several times. One of my former wives, this one lasted 17 years, so that ain't half bad. She is one of the premier focus group moderators in the United States. Can I see some hands? Who knows what a focus group is? Pretty good. Okay. Basically, you get a group of people together, a small group, 4 to 6 people, sometimes as many as 10, and you have a particular topic. And the people sit around and basically conduct a bullshit session about whatever that particular issue or product or idea is, and the moderator obviously is guiding the discussion and keeping it channeled and keeping it focused on what the objective of the group dynamic is from the standpoint of the people who are the sponsors. And what I'm suggesting to you is that you can do exactly the same thing. You don't have to hire someone like Nancy and pay her prices. You can do this yourself. Round up some of your friends and family. Also, it's a good idea to try to find some people that you don't know, because then they don't think that they have some vested interest in giving you answers that they think you want to hear. Don't do just one group. Do 4 or 5. You need to get a good cross-section of what people are thinking about the topic that you've put in front of them. So let's take any kind of simple product. We'll go with Matt and Jason's silicone spatulas. So, conduct some focus groups about silicone spatulas. Ask people what they like about the ones they have. Ask them what they don't like about the ones they have. Ask them what they would change if they could. What would they do to improve it if they could? And then you just sit there like a sponge and soak it up. Quite frankly, the vast majority of what you hear is going to be crap. That's the truth. That's the way it works. But out of that may come some hidden jewels that you never would have thought of in a million years. And when you sit there and think about it, you start to say to yourself, you know, that could work. That could make my product just different enough that people would say, you know, I got to have one of those. So I'm suggesting to you that that's a way in which you can seek out a differentiation for your widget. How many of you remember My Fair Lady? Audrey Hepburn, who will buy my flowers? Well, that's going to be your challenge, isn't it, on Kickstarter, or even when you get to Amazon. Who's going to buy your flowers? Who's going to buy your widget? What they tell you to do on Kickstarter is build a pre-audience of supporters for your campaign. You need to reach out to everybody that you know who's alive enough to fog up a mirror. And you tell them about what you're going to do, and when you're launching, and the great product that you're going to offer, and what makes it special, and the wonderful deal that you're going to give them if they support you right from the get-go. Because this is what you want to have happen. The minute you flip that switch and turn on your Kickstarter campaign, you want this rushing groundswell of support to come rushing in and place orders. Because what does that do? It shows people, oh, wow, other people really like this product. They really think this is a great idea. It creates momentum. And that is critical in the early phases of a Kickstarter campaign. It's not only important that when anybody goes there that they see something's happening, but if it's really happening, you may get lucky, as we did, and you get picked by Kickstarter as one of their staff picks, one of their coveted staff picks. And that really is an enormously helpful designation. So, who's going to buy your flowers? If not your best friends, then who the hell will? So you got to get out there and build this pre-audience of support that you're going to have when the time comes. Well, what happened for me when I flipped the switch? All hell done broke loose. We got flooded with orders. In less than 3 hours, we'd exceeded our goal. We were funded. In less than 3 hours on the first day. But Kickstarter sends you an email. If you're the creator, that's what they call me. They send you an email for each new backer who is supporting you. And it gives that person's name. Now, most of the people on Kickstarter don't use their own names. They use a handle of some kind. That shows you how old I am by using that term. So you see all sorts of weird names and stuff like that. But you can click on that name, and it takes you to that person's profile. Now, typically, it does nothing more than tell you where they live. But here's what it also tells you that was critical to learn. It shows how many Kickstarter projects these people have backed in the past. Doesn't tell you how much money they spent, just the fact that they have backed a certain number of projects. And I was looking at the profile of this huge number of people swarming to support me, most of the names that I did not recognize at all. And these people had backed 30, 40, 50, 100 Kickstarter projects before they found mine. Well, what the hell's going on here, I said. Gang, these are Kickstarter groupies. These are people who are predispositioned to be what marketers call early adopters. It's like when you were a kid. You wanted to be the first kid on the block to have the latest whatever. And a lot of people never lose that mindset. They carry it right on into adulthood. And thank God for that. These are the people that were supporting our campaign. They were what I call organic Kickstarter supporters. They weren't people who knew me from Adam, but they liked what I was doing and they were willing to support it. So, what did I learn was the secret? You've got to get their attention, you have to get their interest, and you have to win their support. So let's talk a little bit about that. Remember, the key thing here is that these are Kickstarter regulars. So what do? Do they go on Kickstarter every day? No, of course not. But they go quite frequently, and they go to categories that interest them. We were in the technology category, which obviously gets a lot of interest. Now, when they don't have any idea of a predisposition on their part to know that a particular project just was launched, like happens with your proprietary group, they're scrolling through the listing of the projects. And here is what happens. And if there is no other takeaway that you leave with respect to success on Kickstarter after listening to me run my mouth today, you keep this one firmly in your mind. You've got 2 to 5 seconds to get their attention when they are scrolling through those images of the projects. Well, what does that image consist of? Let's take a look. If you look at ours, you can see that we've got our name of the product up there. That's probably not a bad idea. We've got a very nice picture of a prototype of our product. Then we've got below that what in the marketing world is called a tagline. And then still below that is our headline. That is what a Kickstarter regular gets to see when they're scrolling through the images. And you've got, as I said, 2 to 5 seconds to get them attracted and interested enough to click on your image that then takes them to your product page. So again, as I said, I think we've got a nice picture. But if somebody were to ask me, what is the one thing that you did, John, of everything else that you did that put your campaign across? And forgive me if I brag for a moment, it was my idea. And that's the tagline. Sunglasses on steroids. Wow. How can anybody who has any interest in sunglasses not be sort of caught up short for a second and say, what the hell is that all about? Who does that guy think he is? Sunglasses on steroids, indeed. I got to check this out. And so they click. That's all I care about. Also, think about what our headline is. It talks there about revolutionary patented technology used by Navy SEALs. Navy SEALs, woo! Well, there's a hot button, isn't it? Once again, they can't resist finding out what the hell is this all about. Now, that may sound very simplistic to you, and you may think, oh, come on, that can't make that much of a difference. Trust me, it does. So what are you going to put in the actual project page? Now we're going to start drilling down and get specific here. Virtually every successful Kickstarter campaign that's ever existed has what is called the campaign video. And you need to make that pretty short. Typically, they tell you 3 to 5 minutes. I think ours was about 4 minutes. And the video itself has to be of decent quality. It can't be crap. I mean, don't shoot this with your cell phone, for God's sake. But it also doesn't have to be Hollywood quality. You do not have to spend an arm and a leg in order to get a good campaign video. Although I will tell you honestly, I have seen some that were remarkable productions, and I shudder to think of what was spent on them. I sure as hell hope they got their money's worth. I spent $600 on my campaign video. I had a professional with professional equipment come and shoot my video. We did it in my home with me standing in front of the fireplace. Those of you that have seen it may recall that. And it was nothing more than me talking to the camera, in this case, the audience that was behind the camera, and telling them what it was that we were doing and why the hell they should care. It was really nothing more than that. So you basically have to make sure that in that video, to the degree that you can, because you have one, is show them a prototype. People are very visual as well as being audio. And so if you've got a prototype, you need to show it to them. And people expect to see that, so you better be prepared to get one, because if you don't have one, you're going to get a lot of flack for not having one. And when you're up there doing your presentation, just, be yourself. Just speak naturally to people. You're like having a chat and a conversation with them in your living room. It's as simple as that. This is a very important point coming. You need to tell the people a story. We've all seen infomercials, haven't we? You've seen direct response sales video letters. All of those things are used on TV and on the internet. And whenever you see something like that, think about it. It's telling you a story. It's not just a dry recitation of facts and figures. It's a story that draws you in and it engages you. You have to create a theme around talking about your project and your product. Well, what was my story? It was a true story. That this eyewear was based upon patented technology that was in special eyewear that the company sells to the U.S. government commands that are the guys out there, what we call the dark ops boys, the guys that do the stuff that would scare the shit out of you and me. Navy SEALs, woo. Rangers, woo. And that story resonated with people. And they said to themselves, boy, if it's good enough for them, it sure would be good enough for me. Well, what if you don't have a convenient story to tell like I did? Again, people sometimes say, well, you had all the advantages going in, John. And I admit that. I still had to capitalize on them, though, didn't I? But what if you don't have the kind of story that was easy to tell like I had? Then use an allegory. Use analogies. Use something that creates a story that tells a compelling proposition. Get people's attention and keep their attention. So, never forget this as a premise for anybody who sells, and we all sell. The more you tell, the more you sell. Don't be afraid of long copy. I think actually, as I looked later at many other Kickstarter projects, that the copy for mine was relatively modest as these things go. My wife said, oh my God, that's way too long. I said, no, it isn't. People will keep reading and paying attention as long as you have their attention. All right, how do you write your copy? You need to use the classic premises and principles of direct response copywriting. Once again, Matt and Jason, to their credit, in the core modules that they teach us, they talk about good copywriting. Everybody who thinks they want to do a Kickstarter project, one of the first things they should do is go back and revisit that module and see what is said about good copywriting. And those of you who already have a product up and selling on Amazon or are close to doing that, you probably have already done quite a bit in terms of learning about some decent principles of copywriting. But don't assume you know it all. You don't. Nobody ever does. So go back and review that. So it isn't just what you say, but it's how you say it. And it's also very important in terms of the formatting that you use. Don't have long paragraphs. Have short paragraphs. And have subheadlines for your paragraphs. It should be possible in theory for someone to go right through your whole campaign reading nothing but the subheadlines and walk away with a pretty clear understanding of exactly what the hell it is that you were talking about and trying to get people to do. Good copywriting is not much different than giving a good speech. You want to know the 3 principles of giving a good speech? Say yes. Yes. Tell them what you're going to tell them. Number 1. Second, tell them. Number 3, tell them what you told them. Repetition is the mother of invention. If you've got a good story to tell, beat it like a gong. Make sure that people understand. So make sure that you have good copy that flows and reads well. And if you don't mind my saying so, if you want a decent idea of what that looks like, go to my Kickstarter project and see what I did and what I said and how I said it. Just so you know, it's still possible, even though that campaign ended months ago, it's still possible to see all of what I did there. They keep all of campaigns from the past. All you have to do is go to the home page, and up at the top it says Search Projects. Just type in Orion Foresight, and it'll bring up that image that you saw on the screen. You click on that, and there you are. You can see the whole campaign just the way it was laid out. This is a critical point. When you're talking in your copy about your product, talk about benefits, not about features. It's absolutely astonishing the number of people trying to sell who knows what. All they can think about to talk about is the features of their widget. That isn't what moves people. They want to know, what's in this for me? And that translates into benefits. So what are the benefits that somebody is going to have and experience if they buy your widget? Are features important? Yes, they are. I'm not trying to denigrate them to the point of saying they don't matter. But they get second billing. Think of it this way. Features support benefits. So you talk first about benefits, and then you talk about the features that support them. That's critical. You should do something that I didn't do, and I wished I had, and that is to have a product video demonstration. That's not the same thing as your primary video where you're laying out the case for your campaign. This would be any ability you might have to have a video shot of your prototype performing whatever it is that it's supposed to do. Because, as we know, the problem with selling anything on the internet is, unlike the bricks and mortar store, you can't pick it up. You can't fondle it. You can't try it on. What we all learn to do in selling on the internet, even if you don't necessarily express it in the way I'm going to, but I think that this tells the story, is you have to learn how to make the intangible tangible. You have to somehow give people the experience that even though they can't personally pick this up and touch it and tweak it, that nonetheless you give them the next best thing they could possibly hope to have, and I would argue that is a video demonstration. As I say, I was not able to do that for a variety of reasons. But what I did do was try to give as much substitute in the way of sort of a written explanation of what was going on. And ideally, you would do both, because some people do much better visually, some people do much better hearing something. It all works, and you've got to try to touch all of the bases. At the very least, you have to make sure that you show people a picture of a prototype of the product. Without that, you're dead. Another thing that is hugely important, along the same idea that you're trying to tangibilize the intangible, is you want to have testimonials. Now that we did a pretty good job with. We had some video testimonials, we had written testimonials. Ideally, you would have both of those because they get the point across. Once again, because people can't personally experience the product, the testimonial is a surrogate for the actual experience itself. You want to be able to put the point across to people that people just like you are using this widget and experiencing it, and they love it. So testimonials are critical. All right, here is some little housekeeping. Before you can launch your project on Kickstarter, you have to get their approval. You have to submit your finished project, your image, your headlines, your video, your pictures of your prototype, the whole thing. And it takes a couple of days for them to approve that. So just allow for that on the timeline of what you're doing. I didn't make the necessary allowance, and I had to launch one day after I thought I was going to, after I told all sorts of people, look for me on a Monday, and they couldn't find me until Tuesday. Was it hugely harmful? Thank God, no. But if I could have known better, I would have done it differently. Part of what you have to do with them before they give you approval is you have to process with them all of your payment plan, in the sense of how will they send the money that you raise to you. So you need to get all of that in place. And here are two things that you want to make sure that you address in your copy, because if you don't do it, they'll tell you to do it. They want to know why you are on Kickstarter raising money. And they want to know what you're going to do with it. So you better have thought about those two questions and come up with some pretty coherent answers. Again, if you don't put them in there, they're going to ask you to do it. You need to make sure that you make a compelling offer. Now remember, this is what's happening on Kickstarter. You're there to raise money. You don't have any product to sell them yet. You haven't even made the product. That's why you're raising money. So what are you going to do to get people to give you money? You don't just simply say, oh, please give me money. This is not GoFundMe. People do that on GoFundMe. It amazes me. And people give thousands. But you have to basically, make sure that you are telling them what you want them to do and making them a compelling offer. Well, what does that boil down to? What you're doing, as you heard me say very early on, is that you are pre-selling your widget. You're basically saying, if you will agree to buy a widget from me with a pre-order, you can't have it yet. I haven't built it yet. I need your money to do that. But if you will order this from me, then you're going to get one of the first widgets. You're going to be the first kid on your block to have one of these wonderful widgets. So you make them a compelling offer. You say, now when we sell these on Amazon, and this is what I said, when we sell these on Amazon, it's going to be 190 bucks. And well worth every penny. But if you support me now when I need you, you can get it for half price, 95 bucks. And then you go on to make them other offers that will hopefully get them to buy more. If you order 2, you get this additional discount. Order 4, here's an even better deal. You'll read some stuff about Kickstarter where it's suggested that you come up with some very exotic and wild rewards for large sums of money. My response to that is crap. Stick with the basics. Don't get people distracted by all sorts of nonsense. Keep them focused on a good, basic, compelling offer. And then remember to ask for the order. You would not believe the number of Kickstarter projects that I've looked at where they've done a great job up until the final moment, and then they didn't say, I need you to place your order, and here is how you do it. You go to the column on the right, you pick the reward that you want, and you click on it. Tell people how to order. One thing that I had to learn the hard way in terms of including in my project was they suggest that you provide some frequently asked questions with obviously the question and the answer. I did that, but quite honestly, I only paid lip service to it, and I paid the price. People swamped me with all sorts of questions about the eyewear and the technology, and how did we know it worked, and how did it compare to polarization, and on and on and on and on. If I could have known that that was going to happen, I would have preempted the whole thing by having exhaustively prepared what turned out to be the final FAQ by the time we were done through trial and error, and I would have saved myself a lot of time and a lot of hassle in terms of dealing with my supporters. All right, here's some tips for a successful campaign. I have to sort of get down here and read it closely. Excuse me, my eyesight ain't what it used to be. All right, you've got to make sure that you communicate with your backers. You've got to stay on top of that. If you're not engaged, you're going to get into real trouble because they'll accuse you of dodging and weaving and not being forthcoming. So that's extremely important. You're going to get a lot of trouble from what I call the Kickstarter police. These are people on Kickstarter who love to be confrontational. They will challenge you. They will even be rude. And you have to simply learn to take it. Because if you respond, if you take the bait and you start getting into arguments with people, it's like kicking the hornet's nest. Don't do it. And it's just part of a Kickstarter rite of passage. This is just part of what comes with the turf on Kickstarter. I mean, I've got permanent teeth marks in my tongue from biting it. But it's just part of what you have to live with. All right, there are, as I said, the benefits of your project by pre-doing an Amazon approach using Kickstarter. You will have tested your product. You will get all sorts of opportunities for reviews that you can seed your product listing on Amazon with. You build a compelling list to work with. You have a chance to preview the product and find out what people have to say about it, and if necessary, fix it before you have a problem on Amazon or a problem from Amazon. Now, here is a most unlikely and remarkable story, and Jason gave you a little bit of an overview of that. I discovered that Amazon is the payment processor for Kickstarter. What that means is that Amazon knows to the penny every Kickstarter campaign that has been successful, how much money they've made. And so when I learned that, I went to a friend of mine who is an ASMer, who has been one of the poster boys for ASM, and a name many of you know, John Gill. John has become a good business friend of mine, and he was granted vendor status with Amazon about 8 months ago. And he's in a category similar to mine. So I went to John and I said, I know this is going to be sort of a long shot, but hey, nothing ventured, nothing gained. I said, would you be willing to go to your brand manager, Chris, and tell him about the story of what I've done on Kickstarter? And point out to him that our next step will be to take our product onto Amazon, but rather than put us through the whole drill of Seller Central, would he consider granting us vendor status because we've already proved the thing that Amazon wants to know before they grant vendor status to any company and its product, and that is, will this sell like hotcakes? And I said, I've proven that. We broke records. John, thank God, said, sure, glad to do that for you. 24 hours later, I got an email from his brand manager saying, I would like to extend Amazon vendor status to you. Wow. I learned subsequently that's the first time they've ever done it. Kind of makes me feel pretty proud about that. I hope that that'll work out in our favor in the long run. But the point of my telling you that story is not to sit up here and gloat, but to simply say it's possible. If I could do it and if they could offer it to me, there's no reason that lightning won't happen to somebody else if they put the right pieces together. As I tell people, I did all of what was necessary to be struck by lightning, and I was. All right, what can you do to get yourself ready to have a dynamite Kickstarter campaign? There are resources that you can find on the internet and in books on Amazon that talk about how to run a good Kickstarter campaign. I urge anybody seriously thinking of doing it to, in fact, avail themselves of those resources. You'll learn a great deal. And in a moment, I'm going to tell you about one that's really dynamite. Then you want to make sure that you've differentiated your product in a meaningful way and obviously arranged to have that differentiation manufactured into the product that you're going to be offering. Then, as you've heard me say, it is critical to get the ingredients of your image correct. You need to have a good picture, you need to have a dynamite tagline that commands and compels attention, and then a very good headline that follows it up. You need to get people to click on that image in the 2 to 5 seconds you have to do that. Then you need to create a good video, a good primary video where you tell your story. You need to have a prototype to show people. You need to have a demonstration video if you can. You need to stay engaged with your people. If you let them take over the commentary thread of both the public comments and the private comments, they'll take it over and run away with your campaign, and you'll never catch up, and you'll lose control. You have to stay on top of it. And then, I guess the best thing that I could tell you is throughout the entire campaign, be true to yourself and true to your product. It's not in my notes, but that if I had to look back on it, I think that is an important ingredient. All right, here's a special offer that I want to tell you about. There's a guy named Matt Ward who's become a friend of mine. He runs a website called artofthekickstart.com. Not Art of the Kickstarter, just kickstart.com. It is a place where people who are aspiring to run a Kickstarter campaign hang out, and people who have done them successfully. And it's not unlike our Facebook community for ASM. You can go and ask to be part of that, and you can interact with people, and you can just learn a ton of stuff. God, I wish I'd known about Matt before I did my project. I didn't discover him until later, or I should say he discovered me and wanted to interview me. But right now, he has put together a fabulous course for a Kickstarter project. Normally, he charges $347 for this, but he's doing a special right now that he's making available to everybody in ASM for $47 lousy. It is a friggin' steal. And let me assure you that I have no affiliate relationship with Matt on this. I will not get one dime if you choose to take advantage of this offer. At the very least, I'm suggesting if you're even remotely thinking that you would have a Kickstarter campaign, you want to go and check this out. And right up there is the link, is the URL where you can go and read about his course and what he has in that. Matt is the genuine article. He knows this stuff, and he's a wonderful resource. Let me finish by simply telling you, if you will do what others won't, you will have what others don't. Thank you.